Sup nerds, Own Goal here, bringing you a video depicting how to play like a wide stat build against a melee push. This is a tournament game against Danican from today. He's a pretty good player, but still hasn't totally figured things out. We're playing a whole lot of state troops and infantry and some archers to back it up. And he's got like this wide melee wall. So I picked this replay because it's a pretty level one illustration of like how to crush the other player with this style of build. And I think you need to see that kind of thing first to be able to do more complex things in closer games later. So this is just like level one exposition stat wall push. Unlike some other builds we've showed where we have a bunch of guns on the back rank, this is all archers. So we get to play more of like a closed checkerboard, meaning there's not like big gaps for our guns to shoot through. We've put the swordsman in front because we expect infantry to be engaged there, and then spears on the second line, um, because cav is what's going to tend to be on the second line. So right out the gate, we take our skirmishing and vanguard troops, and we go contest the point with the cav and the vanguard. This gives them less time to like build up and poke us. And then for reinforcements, we're going to be bringing in a bunch of cav and like a little bit of additional shooting and a cannon. You can see that Danikin's build has like a little bit of shooting to keep us off, but then it's mostly just like slow infantry. So all we have to do when we see this kind of rush is get points so he doesn't get too far ahead, and then set up in a strong defensive position, shoot him, and then when they bring in reinforcements and they try to dive our backline, use our cav and free company militia summon to punish the diving units. There's a little bit of like nuances in the dance here where he wants to get initial shots off on us in spells. So you can do things like walk in and get a volley with the huntsman and walk them out, and dodging shots should help out. When you can get unbraced infantry or side charges with stuff on stuff with your Empire Knights, like go for that also. But you can kind of see the gist of this is like we're set up in a good defensive formation. If you want, you could just keep your whole army on one hotkey and manage it that way. And then basically only position your army and deal with microing the cav and not worry about too much else. So here we're getting our point. We don't need to push further out because he's melee. So like he ideally wants to set up a surround like this and collapse on us. Before we had a flat line, we denied our flank and moved our shooting troops back a little bit so he couldn't get a clean surround. And then he backed up a bit. So now we just are slow pushing the point to put some pressure on him, but we don't actually need to force anything. He's getting a little bit of poke, but his poke lord is very expensive, so it has to, or else it won't trade even. And we're just banking Wom with the Skelt. Well, we shoot a couple units that we caught and push in. If he had all 3 points, we would need to push a little bit harder, but because we have one, we sort of get like our liberty here to shoot and build up our army. The main thing we want to avoid is like giving him really good uncontested fire with his pinks. So he does a good job pushing these up. We move out with our Empire Knights, and at the same time we summon a backline cannon. The idea here is to micro tax him by pushing and maybe get a couple good cannon volleys off. And then these things are complementary. The cannon covers the range that the knights are in, so he can't countercharge as easily with fiends. And then that gives the knights more ability to cover our ranged units, so that he can't jump on them, and so that we can push his shooting units off, which in turn lets our range units move up and shoot more. So that's kind of like the gist of these pieces. It's very important that if you have a back rank cannon like this, you have some stuff in the vicinity once you see a summon of like mobility or flying units. So like if he summons a Fury, we'll make sure to have a Knight hanging out like somewhere like here. And the best thing you can do against flying units and diving units is summon a free company militia, because they have these they have high model count and a very straight volley, so they're exceptional at shooting unarmored mobility units like the ones the Demons of Chaos bring out. So when we get a chance, when his lord walks in, we just take like a few good shots on it. He gets some poke, but we get ours back. Can't really dodge the free company bullets. And there's no real impetus for us to engage here because of the points. I'm just going to fast forward. So we're like slow pushing, but trying to only get trades where we're trading slightly up. And while all this is happening, we're kind of getting ahead because we have a cheaper lord than him. So he needs this expensive lord to get like 2.5k, and all we need to do is cast final trans on a couple things. You want to be aware of where their diving mobility is. So like he clearly wants to come around the sides with this. So we've pre-positioned a spear, and then we'll summon some spears. We have cheap spears in our reinforcements. You'll see the build at the end. There we pop off a final trans because his lord is standing on top of some other units, and we have plenty of Wom. Once you start going for their lord, you kind of want to try to kill it. It's not great if you get the lord like really low and you spend a lot of resources doing that. But this is a little bit of a unique situation in that he's not really engaging with the rest of his army. So we're not losing out on like time for our units to bully it. So we just take the shots that he's giving us. Um, when you're poking their front line with knights, you can get a charge off, and that does pretty well. But you don't want to leave them in melee for too long. So a pretty common tactic is to like cycle charge up and down the line. Another thing to be careful of is once you charge in, you want to not have all of your archers shooting the unit your knights are in, because your knights can like accidentally body block and take a bunch of friendly fire, which nobody wants. So now we're pretty far ahead. You know, we've been shooting him. We've been winning the poke exchange. Bog standard. We never really left our defensive formation. Just like, you know, trying to get a few picks with the knights, trying to use our final trans well when we can, and then keeping our archers firing, and just taking any trade where we're shooting more than he is. Like, it's fine. You can take damage. The outriders with chevrons are a pretty interesting unit. The chevrons make them much more accurate, and they hit really hard. They, for a mobile unit, 42 AP is just ridiculous here. Uh, so this is a unit I like a lot. You kind of only want one, and it wants to hang out in the back line once you have like clean mobility control. Now he's diving. We're already set up for the dive, so your best case is like you get these fights where you have a spear supporting a cav, and your cav and your spear are fighting theirs. There was a little tactic. He was trying to like side charge our knights and run away with the fiends. He did what's called the cav pull, so he's taking a charge from my 2 units. He charges his unit out and tries to counter charge. He was hoping to get +1 charge, but we did the right counter tactic, which is we just counter charged his flesh hounds. And similarly, like when they do these big backline dives, just summon a bunch of spears and cav and use them to intercept. Your spears are very cost effective, so you can kind of just waddle a bunch of them around. And then when their lord is low, you know, if you get a chance, get the final trans. If not, find 2 or 3 expensive units and pop it off. You don't have to be that careful with Gelt because he's so cheap. So now the rest of it's pretty formulaic. We're up a whole bunch of value. Try to prioritize summoning spears and cav. Get some cav cycle charges when you can. You know, keep the archers that you still have alive online. Know your target priority. So like sort the units by their cost to health ratio or their damage to health ratio. So like fiends are expensive and not that tanky, so they're a high priority. And in a matchup, if you kind of have a sense for your target priority, like if this archer can reach multiple things, it wants to shoot that, you'll need to spend a lot less time thinking because you'll just have it unlocked. Like, okay, turn and shoot. One other tactic to mention with ranged units, if they get partially stuck in melee, it helps to have a hotkey for guard mode, and then you can just click drag them into a better formation. So you like look up like the click dragging, but you issue one order and then you can forget about the unit, and it'll walk over there and start shooting on its own, which helps out a lot with your micro. So I'm doing that a lot. Like here, I should be doing it here. Anytime a unit that doesn't want to be in melee and wants to be shooting is stuck, that's a pretty effective thing to do. And then later you can like retarget and stuff, but just getting it out. So now I'm going to fast forward. He's extremely far behind. You know, we've given him the 3 cap, so you want to time pushing back, not to lose. But when you're this far up on value, it's kind of formulaic. So we're just going to summon Cav, take the trades, push the chaff onto the points, keep the ranged units shooting. And that's kind of the basics of this build. Obviously, like Danican's a very good tournament player, and we needed to do a few things with like good Cav micro and such, but against most opponents, you'll be able to just load in a Mantide like this and do a slow push on one hotkey. And if you're going to focus on one thing, it's where do you put the main army and how do you hinge the flanks? Once you kind of get that down, like where are you taking the engage and what are you doing with your main army? The next thing to work on is your Cav micro, like getting good trades with the Cav, getting easy picks. So that's kind of the gist. Taking a quick look, Gelt did well. He had final trans left. Spears did well. Infantry did well. Archers did phenomenally. Everything kind of did its job against the demons. Cannon baited a lot of aggro. And the demons, you know, nothing really did well. We just countered them except for the pinks, which did fine, and that's all right. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you like this kind of content. See you soon, nerds.